Today, I have the luxury of having Jeffrey Scott join me today. My name is Beth Berry. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for Real Green Software. We're based in Walled Lake, Michigan. I'm broadcasting today from Indianapolis, Indiana. We are all working remote, other than a handful of folks who have to manage the shop there on site. And on Facebook Live at 11 a.m. every day, I bring in a special guest. And Jeffrey and I met by phone in November. I reached out to Jeffrey because he has some unique consulting clients and strategy for those in the green industry and in the chemical lawn care space. He has provided insights to some of my good friends and our customers. And so I reached out to him to see if there were some joint opportunities. I've enjoyed following him. So as you know, in this side of the industry where we consult and provide services, we are very busy until about right now when our clients go out the door. So Jeffrey and I had planned to reconnect anyway. I've been following you and the advice you've been giving the industry and really appreciate the insightful pieces, particularly around financial pillars, but you obviously have a well-rounded view in your many years of consulting, so we'll touch on several topics, but why don't you do your own introduction, because I probably didn't do it as well. I'd love to know what your background was before you started doing this.
Thank you so much, Beth, for inviting me here. By the way, if you hear me coughing, it's allergy season down here in New Orleans, and I've had allergies since I was a kid, so that will be the coughing. I'm located in New Orleans.
Before you get started there, I just saw a cartoon. It said, "It's a shame COVID hit during allergy season because I don't know if I have 5 days to live or I need a Claritin," and I feel the same way.
Exactly. Well, so I worked for many years in Connecticut and Northeast. I just moved down to New Orleans, empty nest. I can work from anywhere as a consultant. I work all over the US and Canada. And so I've been in the industry since I was 7, right? Family business, grew up in the industry. In high school in the industry, and then took a break, took about a 10-year break where I got a degree in chemical engineering, and I earned my MBA, and I did corporate consulting. And then I came back in the industry running my family's, at the time, let's call it in today's dollars, $15 million landscape business, fully integrated. And for the past 10 plus years, really since the Great Recession, I sold out my business, or my ownership in that business, and have been consulting head on. And it's interesting, Beth, this is normally my quiet time right about now, as my clients just, gear up and head out. And I have been busy supporting, talking, cajoling, bringing together clients, and just helping where I can. So probably the same with you, I assume, Beth.
Very much so, very much so. What's your number one most frequently asked question you're receiving right now from clients?
It's not so much of a question as it is, gosh, what the heck is going on and how do we get through this? And it's more just a sort of a shock, I think, I would say initially. And now people are starting to get a hang on it, and especially with the government, at least in the US, right, with the SBA loans. So really, it wasn't so much a single question as much as it is somebody just saying, "Oh my God," and then silence, and then I'm there to help fill in and give guidance and direction.
Excellent. So give us guidance and direction. What do you got for us today?
I prepared some talking points. I work with about 90 landscape, lawn care, lawn companies at a time, so I'm in touch across the country with multiple people at any one time. And so I've pulled together, based on the needs I've seen and what I've been talking about, 8 points. I'll just kind of read them to you here real quick, and then we'll dive into it. I have some big picture thoughts on cash flow management, thoughts on how to inoculate yourself from bad news. I have some economic and virus predictions, some go forward strategy for you, and then some thoughts on leadership, marketing, and then finally, how will you be remembered when this is over? And so I have some thoughts on that. I'll just jump right in here, Beth. So big picture, right? If you're running a business, you're in some level of in the day-to-day, and this really has been an opportunity for some of my clients running, medium-sized businesses, larger businesses, where they've had a chance to delegate operations and truly delegate operations so they could focus on the big picture. And when you do that, you see who your crisis-worthy partners are. My client, Paul Friend, who is, Paul, he's pretty active in NALP. And this really lets you know in your employees and your vendors, et cetera, who your crisis-worthy partners are, and you're taking note, right? Because you're really delegating. And if you've had the chance to put together a 10-year vision, a 3-year vision, it's a chance for you to both work on the critical items now, the SBA loans and the safety of your employees, but also to keep one eye towards the future and practice being that leader or CEO. And so I think big picture, this is an opportunity for you as owner to get in that owner seat, get in that CEO seat if you have not already. So if you're under $1 million, okay, that could be tougher, right? But if you have any kind of team in place, this is it. This is like the stress test they put the banks through a couple of years ago. This is your stress test. Does your organization work? And are you able to really step up and be that leader? So those are just some questions for you to ponder to make sure you're taking advantage of this opportunity. I'd like to talk about cash flow. So my first recommendation to clients was to put together some what-if scenarios. And this was a couple weeks ago. I said, well, what if you drop 20% or 40% this year? What will you do? What does that budget look like? Now, I'm talking to clients, Beth, that are actually planning to grow this year in spite of everything. And so I think that's just awesome. And I have clients that are planning on making more money this year, granted with the SBA infusion. So it's not all down. It's a mix of up and down. And I have clients that are saying, I don't know. I have no clue. That's not possible. You, as a leader, you can't not have a clue. You have to just talk through, and you can't, it's hard to figure out in your head, Beth, right? You need someone, whether it's a coach like me or your team, to talk through the scenarios and then come up with a couple likely scenarios and base some plans on that. And so, no, we can't tell the future. Yes, this is the most turbulent times ever, but no, you can't not have a clue. And so putting together some what if scenarios, absolutely critical, just as a starting point. Beth, what have you seen when you've talked to everybody, all of your Real Green clients? What are their projections?
It's funny because many of them have a very specific question, and at Real Green, for those companies that want to continue service and have the ability, right now, we are very dedicated to ensuring that our customers are legally able to go about their business. So I'm on the board at NALP as the member chair, and I work closely with them, and those guys are working 24/7 to help us. So a lot of the conversation has been around, can I get out the door to do my business? And then a lot of just answering the phone going, oh my God, like you said, go back to that 40% what if statement. And I love that. That's what caught my attention. And you put that out there pretty quickly when all this was going on. Are you time constraining that as well? So are you saying if revenue drops 20% by June and 40% by August?
No, that's an annual projection.
Annual.
Where do you think you will end up? And to be honest, 20, 40, or 60%. But for your audience, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you were like all design build, and in a market like Michigan, I don't know, that could happen, right? So, I mean, you're making projections to see what you would do in those scenarios so that you have a plan so you can be more calm. And that's the purpose. It's not to tell your folks all those plans, right? You're going to share with them the more likely possible scenarios and manage your leadership team through those, maybe more narrow projections. But as the owner, you've got to do that exploration.
Sure.
So one thing I've been doing with my clients, Beth, it'd be interesting for Real Green to do this, is maybe even once a month, where do you think it'll be at year end? Just real quick, what are people seeing, you know? And when I meet with my peer groups, and now I've been meeting with them online, we do a visual face-to-face, we go around the room quick, and what is everybody force, if they had to guess, where do they think they'll be? And it's just very instructive, right? And it's from growth to, you know, some kind of decline, to even to last year to some kind of decline.
I like that. And in the lawn care world that I've been in, and this has been true for over 30 years, on May 31st, you could reforecast the year. We would always call it the call the year meeting. And outside of a drought or some major weather event, you could call it within a couple of percent, but I don't think that's going to be the case this year. So I like what you're saying. You really need to do it about once a month.
Well, interesting that you said May 31st, because I bet by then you will be able to call it pretty close. I think. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. So cash flow. People, you know, if we go back 20 years, right, people were not even doing budgets. I spend a lot of my time with every new client getting them on a monthly budget. You have to do monthly budgets. You have to make monthly projections so that you can look at monthly actuals. And I spent the past X number of years on that crusade. And now the crusade has changed. Now I want you to live in weekly budgets, and not budgets per se, but cash flow projections. And so I've created a little cash flow projection here. I'm going to swing us over here. And I want to talk briefly about operating cash flow. So simply put, a cash flow projection is, you know, your inputs minus your outputs. Well, I'm sorry, starting cash, and then inputs, so your revenue that comes in, cash that comes in, sorry, not revenue, cash, and then expenses that go out, and then you have your ending balance. And so that's a weekly cash flow, different from an accrual-based annual budget and monthly budget, right? An accrual-based budget is where revenue matches expenses, and you have to follow that golden rule to have a good accrual-based budget to do good profit management and projections. But now I want you to think about a cash flow budget and a cash flow projection, and I want you to do it weekly. And so forget about matching revenue and expenses. We're just looking at cash. So starting balance, let me write it out for you here. A weekly cash flow projection has the starting balance, right? And then you have the cash that comes in, cash in, then you have minus the cash out, and that gives you your ending balance. You can tell I did not win awards here for handwriting. In second grade, my teacher made me go to her room. I don't know if it was once a day or once a week or twice a week. And for an hour, I had to practice handwriting all by myself. There was somebody next to me on the other green board. And I don't think it helped, but
it did a little,
right? So what I want people to do now is put in a 13-week, which is 3 months, rolling cash flow projection. And so you can look back how your cash flow came in and out if you have a history in QuickBooks for the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and kind of see how it works. And then you can create your 13-week rolling projection for this year. And really, you can do that as well by looking at your fixed recurring expenses, whatever that is, you know, utilities, loans, etc. And then you can look at your labor, subs, materials, and other variable costs and make guesses, and then you have make a projection. So 13 columns with projections, and then you can see where your cash is going to go over that time period. Hopefully it stays positive the whole time, but you'll see if it's going to go negative. And every week you would insert a column and show the actual, and then add another week of projection. So you do the 13-week rolling projection. Each week you add in an actual to see how you actually did, and it'll mathematically sort of recalculate the projections, and then you add another projection on at the next, you know, the 13th week that will that will shift by 1 week. And so I would ask everybody to become an expert at cash flow management. Some of my clients, Beth, have they're just sitting on $1 million. They're not as worried. But I think you can get lazy when you're not worried. And so I think everybody should do rolling projections. And if you're flush, you're going to do it in a simpler way. And if you're not flush, if you're tight, if you have a poor balance sheet, you're going to really watch it. And so with that in mind, I have another concept for you. So OCF is operating cash flow. That's what I want you to become experts at. And so really I have two concepts here, surviving and thriving. These are two levels of cash flow management. I'm going to just explain both of them here. Right now, some of us are worried about surviving. That's okay, right? That's what the whole SBA loan is there for. But I want you to learn how to thrive from a cash flow perspective. But first, surviving. So operating cash flow, as I said, is your starting balance, right? So you have your start, and then you have your incoming cash for the week minus your outflow, and then that gives your ending balance, right? So operating cash flow. But what many people are going to do to survive is you're going to defer your loans, right? You've called the utilities, you've called the people that have your loans, and you've asked if you could defer it. And really, because of the flush economy that the Fed has helped with, which we'll talk about in a second, that doesn't seem to be a problem. And then you might take on new loans, right? The SBA is going to loan you money. Now they're talking about forgiveness, but for now it's a loan. And even if it was a gift, it's still extra money that's not part of your operating cash flow. So operating cash flow minus deferred loans plus new loans should give you a positive number at the end of the week. You want every week to be positive, right? And you want the cumulatives to be positive because you want your company to be creating cash. They call it throwing off cash, right? You want it to be a cash cow. Now, it won't really happen every week, but at least every month, or at least cumulatively every quarter. But ideally, if you could have the ideal, it would actually be every week. Now that's surviving. Thriving is if you take your operating cash flow, your net of the week, and you continue to do capital expenditures that you were planning on for this year, which I took completely out of surviving mode. If you continue to do your capital expenditures and you had no loans and no gifts, if that number was positive each week, now we're talking. Now you're thriving. Now your business is creating cash, and it is a cash generating machine. And so the closer you can get to thriving each week, the more you have a thriving business, you've got a cash flow generation. So my advice is learn how to do this, learn how to read your operating cash flow, learn how to manage it by the week, learn to survive, and do as best as you can to push yourself over towards thriving. And when we work our way through this, you're going to be back in the mode where you can and should be thriving every week. So 2020 for me is the year of learning how to be a good cash flow manager.
That is easy to understand and vitally important right now.
Absolutely. And you've been with me on this journey of teaching people how to budget and then learning how to do a monthly budget. Now we're down to the weekly. And the opportunity here, I did a video on it last week. Here, I'm going to swing back around here. I did a video on it last week about sweeping out the bad habits. Now's the time to sweep out those bad habits. Now, many of you have already done that, or you've already done much of it, but many of you haven't, and there's certain bad habits that are just bothering you that are still happening in your company, whether it's people stopping to pick up their lunch or mulling around after they clock in, well, whatever the bad habits are. Now's the time. They say don't let a crisis go to waste. Now's the time to address it once and for all and really set a new normal that you're going to operate through once we get through this crisis that we're in. And so, and sometimes it's even poor comp plans. Maybe your sales commissions were set up too fat, or whatever you had set up that wasn't working, fix it now. Fix it now, be compassionate, but give reasons, be direct, show your cash flow forecast if you need to the people you're talking to, and fix it now. Hey, we're all in this together, right? That's the good times and the bad times. So we're all in this together. Let's fix and sweep out our bad habits now. I'd like everyone to look at their business as you would if you were an investor in your own business, right? And so investors want to know what's the return on their investment they put into your business. How are you able to maximize the revenue based on that investment? Are you able to maximize the profit based on that revenue? And are you able to maximize the cash based on that profit? So an investor looks at the assets and the capital put in. They look at the revenue you can generate as a percentage of that. They look at the profit that comes off of that revenue, and they look at the cash that comes off the profit. So I want you to be thinking that way as well. You're probably putting a cap on investments depending on your situation. And I want you to maximize. There's my dogs.
We love that. Dogs and kids, they're accepted now. You don't even have to say shush anymore.
Yeah, I don't have to yell at them anymore. So look at your company as an investment, as an investor would. Now's really the opportunity to maximize that. That's what I'm dealing with all my clients, helping them just to think like that. And it's not complex, Beth, as you said. It just takes a certain discipline and certain tools. So that's cash flow. I want to talk about bad news. You ready for me to switch gears here a bit?
I am. Bad news. We've heard a lot of bad news lately. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about it. So first, let's talk about the radio stations, right? There's the radio, the TV, the Facebook. They're just putting out news. They only make money when they get readers, and they get readers by putting negative, usually more than positive, as you know, and hype headlines. And so I want to talk about your employees and what they're listening to. When they're listening to you, they're most likely getting good vibes, good information, good data. But when you're not talking to them and they're off listening, they turn on the radio or Facebook, and it's this news that just really is discomforting and often not right, often even lies. And so I want you to think of yourself as a radio station. You as the owner need to think of yourself as a radio station. You can't go radio silent. You know what it's like when you turn on your favorite radio station and all you hear is the beep, or you hear nothing. That's weird. So I'm asking you not to go on radio silence. Realize that when you're not communicating with your team, that vacuum, that void is filled with everything I just said before. So make sure there's not a void. Have your daily communication. Write your weekly blog or twice weekly blog to your employees. Be the radio station of choice for your employees. That will inoculate them against the bad news they're hearing. Now, I want to inoculate you now against the bad news you're going to hear. Let's put on our big boy pants here, big girl pants.
Okay.
There's there's really two kinds of bad news that you're going to hear from an economic standpoint. One, jobless reports, right? We just had the most jobless ever come out, and the stock market actually went up when that jobless report came out because it was so bad that I think, this is my view, the stock market said, oh, it's never going to be that bad. We just got through the worst of it. But still, there's jobless reports and cumulative jobless reports that it has been shocking the system. So that's number one. The second bad news you're going to hear is the quarterly GDP. So once a quarter, the definition of a recession is 2 quarters in a row of negative growth. I think we're in a recession, and I think the quarterly GDP in quarter 2 is going to be horrific, the worst it's ever been. So I want to inoculate you now that the newspaper is I don't think we're going to go into a depression, but we might technically be there, and the newspapers are going to say it on headlines that big, right? They're going to take advantage of it and try to scare you. I would say scare this crap out of you, but I can't say that on You have to bleep that part out. But
Okay.
they're really going to try. They're going to try to scare you. And so I want to inoculate you now that when you're in the depths, that's when you really should be thinking about growth. So when that bad news comes and people tell you to run for the hills, sell your stock, sell everything, that's when you should be buying. When everyone else is selling, you should be buying. More clients, better employees, more market share. You should be really in the ramp up stage. So, I'm just sharing that with you, not to scare you, but to say, listen, it's going to happen. Globally, the 2008 recession, globally we went down only 0.5%, but globally that's a lot. U.S. went down more, but on average, the global economy went down 0.5%. My sources say we'll go down 2%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 4 times the big recession. But I think it's going to be a sharp V. That's my prediction. We're going to go down and then back up quickly. A V means within 24 months we'll be back up. Here's my prediction about the virus. First, let me just talk a bit about it. The study came out a couple of weeks ago. It was what was it? It was this English study. It'll come to me in a second. By the university there. It'll come to me in a second. And so it came out 2 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. A lot of bad news. It was, oh my God, look what's happening. Oh, it was the
Cambridge,
no,
wasn't it?
What's that?
I thought it was Cambridge.
Might have been. It might have been. And it turns out that they got some of their assumptions wrong. And it turns out they didn't have complete data. And so another study came out, I think from Oxford, that said, well, first off, their assumption they made at the beginning of their study was sort of a niche assumption. And they only had a week's worth of data. Most scientists have reams of data, right? Reams. Let me stand back. Reams and reams. They had a little bit of data, not accurate. They made some wrong assumptions. So the early studies that you're reading are just by their nature not accurate and not as accurate as they're getting with each week that passes. So the studies that will be coming out or are coming out now are going to be twice as accurate as before. And so don't believe everything you're hearing and don't believe the first conclusions you're hearing. The next studies that come out will be that much more accurate. I would say if we peak within April or May, that we'll have a good bounce back, a V in the recession. If it's worse, we'll have more of a U. But my sources say now to look for an April or May peak, and economically, the brains, like for example at Morgan Stanley, are saying we'll be more in a V recession. And so, really what we're looking for is the peaks in confirmations and deaths. And the peaks are rising in part because we're getting more testing out there, right? At least in confirmations. So watch for when we hit its peak, and when we get days in a row where it's dropping, that's when people should take a sigh of relief and be prepared to really grow forward. Now, I think by then the studies will be a lot more accurate in terms of what the virus will actually do and how it's going to behave. And so we'll have more certainty then, and so we'll know a lot better. I think we won't know exactly soon, but we'll know a lot better, and we'll know a lot more than we knew even a couple weeks ago.
Excellent.
So economic predictions, right? Let me just say something about the Fed. The Fed, at least in the US, the Fed who are in place now, many of them were in place in 2008. So the same, technocrats, right? The same lifelong politicians that are dedicating their life to service, not the ones that are sort of elected in and out, but the ones that tend to be there more long-term, same people that were there in 2008, they saw the mistakes that they made back then, which is they did too little and they did it too late. And so now you see this huge rush of money coming in liquidity to the banks, to corporate bonds, but also they're not forgetting about middle class America. So they're coming to small companies through the SBA loans, and they're coming, checks are coming in the mail. So it's broad based. We've never seen anything like that. That gives me a lot of hope. And with Trump in office, whether you hate him or you love him, he's definitely pro-business, and I believe helped greasing the wheels for this. So I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic about the economy. Beth, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. So I'm literally, with my investments, backing up what I'm telling you. So I believe literally what I'm telling you. And they say never believe somebody who doesn't follow their own advice. Well, I'm following my own advice here, right? I've got skin in this game. So that's what I believe is going to happen. And so I would say keep your foot on the gas. Opportunities will be everywhere. Pivot your services where need be. Pivot how you go to market. Pivot how you sell. I actually think, Beth, the lawn care is ahead of the whole green industry in terms of this pivot. Selling by phone, doing work by phone. I think the majority of lawn care companies, or the majority of the professional ones, the ones on the cutting edge, are already there. But if you're not, this is the time to pivot your services, possibly add new services, right? Disinfectant. I heard Chris talk about that, how he was a little bit leery of that from, being a large company. But I think this is a time to be faster to market, faster to sell, look for new services, be innovative, asking your team to be more innovative, right? Keep your eye on the long-term vision, but definitely look for the innovations day to day with your team. We're in this together. I run multiple peer groups: landscape, irrigation, service, lawn care, fertilizer, chemical. I just did a study of my lawn care clients. Their average GPM, gross profit margin, excluding burden, so just labor, subs, materials, excluding burden, the average is 58%, and my high achievers, let's say the top 20% of all my clients, are at a 72% gross profit margin. So they're killing it. And that's, I tell everybody, if you're below average, I want you to get to average. If you're at average, I want you to aim for the high achievers, the top 20%. And if you're in the top 20, I want you to aim to be the best. Now, not everybody can be above average, right? By definition, average is here in the middle. We can't all be above average, but if we all strive to be above average and in the high achievers, then the average moves up and the whole industry moves up. And that's what I aim for with my clients, is to, move everybody up and sort of create that internal competition and fun to be better than the next guy or gal, and really to move your business productivity up. And this is the year really to do that. If there was ever a good year, this is that year.
This is the one.
Any questions on that before I talk a bit about leadership?
No, I think that is excellent information. And in terms of adding the additional service lines, we do have customers who are adding the disinfectant. And additionally, and it pairs well with anytime you're going to have these essential services, because let's be clear, this may go away. This round may go away in a few weeks, but certainly I don't think we're done with COVID or the next of this. And the words essential service and this industry, we're going to have to stay on top of our game. But perimeter pest control, many of our customers have done that for years. Now you can prevent, Larry Ryan told me that in the Midwest and Kansas, they prevent 80 to 85% of insects and rodents that would go in the home. Now you don't even have to have an exterminator come inside. It's a very highly profitable service line that they've offered for years. So adding perimeter pest, adding mosquito, flea, and tick, I think it's the perfect time, if you're not already, to highly market those.
In my peer groups, we've studied what makes a high achiever, what makes that top 20% performer. And there's a few factors. And one of the factors is that they have a high level of add-on services, prescriptions, you might call them. Some are prescriptions for the lawnman, some are just add-on services like you just mentioned. But the more services that a tech can do, the higher your margins will be. So no matter what type of niche you're in, whether it's landscape, maintenance, lawn care. You all need to be doing these add-on services, these prescriptions or enhancement services, because that's what moves the margin needle up.
Agreed.
So, oh yeah. So let's talk about leadership here briefly. It's key as a company that you have cultural capital. Cultural capital is what's going to help you win in this current situation and in all situations. Cultural capital. And so you get that by building that we feeling with your team, by over communicating, by really making it about them and promoting your employees as the people that can win by joining your company, right? But in today's market, I think it's important to the way you build on this cultural capital is to meet your employees where they are, because everyone's in a different spot right now. And I talked to a client last week. He had 3 family deaths from this and 2 other people in the hospital. I wouldn't have known if he hadn't told me. And I have another client whose wife she's a nurse, and she had a nervous breakdown working in the hospitals with the stress, and there weren't enough masks to go around, and they wouldn't let her wear one because she couldn't prove that she had been infected, and high stress. But I wouldn't have known that if he hadn't told me. And so I think it's important to meet your employees where they are, but you have to find out where they are. Asking them, hey, how are you feeling? You know, where's your bar here in terms of how are you handling the stress and how are you feeling about this? And then question 2, what's your home situation? Tell me what's going on at home. They'll tell you, and then you know really what's going on right away. And, you know, is there anything I can do for you? So I think those 3 questions, show empathy, create communication, give you as the owner the knowledge you need, lets the employee know that you care. That builds cultural capital. And now is as good a time as any, and really the most important time to be having those empathy-based conversations, getting in touch with your internal clients, and that will help you be a better leader, right? You can't just make across-the-board cuts thinking everybody will weather this the same if you were doing that, just as an example. This is a time to really know how your team's going to be impacted, and being sensitive and making adjustments where you feel is right, so that the team all feels cared for and is charging ahead with you. Also, if you're working from home and if you're shut down, even if you're in a non-essential service state, keep all your meetings going. In fact, you might want to increase your meetings. So if you had a daily huddle, if you had a weekly sales meeting, a weekly leadership meeting, keep all of those going. Keep the keep the rhythm of that people have come to rely on, and keep that going. And you might even increase the types of meetings you're having so everybody feels connected. So I think that's really critically important.
That's excellent. I was able to attend General Stanley McChrystal has a business leadership opportunity in Arlington, Virginia, if you ever can fit that into your schedule. And he was the former Joint Chief of Staff. And he talks a lot about battle rhythm, and that's 365 days a year. There's a battle rhythm. So on months and months and years where there's nothing exciting happening, at this time every day, there's a 10-minute daily stand-up, and that's part of the battle rhythm. But when you enter a period of crisis, it becomes more important that you can rely upon the fact that there's that part of your routine and schedule and touch point that you know is there.
Excellent. I just wrote it down while you're talking. Yeah,
that's good.
There you go. Battle rhythm. My gut told me it was the right thing to do, but now apparently it's proven. There's a great book, by the way, Atomic Habits. Have you read that, Beth?
Oh, I love it.
Right. It's a good book.
If I had read it and actually adopted all of it, I'd be about 20 pounds lighter right now, but I'm going to pull it back out now that you've reminded me.
But it's great for those that have to work at home, because you have to be disciplined. Oh, speaking of weight loss, I am so glad a few months ago I bought a Peloton, because that's been definitely helping.
Mine arrives Friday. No,
Uh,
I canceled my lifetime gym fitness, but I only have one kneecap. I'm not supposed to run anyway. So I'm shifting to Peloton. I'm counting on it being the answer to my fitness right now.
you're gonna love it.
Good.
I don't have stock in it, so no conflict of interest there. But I know we only have about 9 minutes left here. So I have some other things, but if you want to ask me questions instead, how do you want to handle this?
Well, there's one question I do want you to answer, and we don't have a hard stop. I can go past that, but I'd love to know, one of the most frequently asked questions we get is from companies who maybe they were going to commence servicing, call it the first week of April, and here we are, the first week of April. Today's April 6th, and they've said, well, you know what, my governor has said essential services, and even though NALP has assisted in defining landscaping, there's a stay-at-home order, so I don't know if I really need to go out right now. And I know that's very broad, and it's big and small companies, but what is your response to those that you consult with that are unsure whether or not they should move forward right now?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I do for them. I act as that sounding board for them to have that conversation. I have found that in this instance, you each have to make your own decision, right? Because you're going to live with this. Let me talk about marketing for a second, because it has to do with this. So I was going to talk about targeted marketing. I'm going to put that aside for a second. Your job is to protect your employees and protect your clients. And your job is to tell your employees what they need to do to protect each other and what you're doing to protect them. So you have to communicate it to them. And your job is to tell your clients what you're doing to protect them and how you're handling and keeping their interests, up top in priority. Absolutely critical. Now, I'm on this app called Nextdoor. Oh my God, it's full of it's got mostly complainers on it, right?
It does, but I've lost my dog twice and they've helped me find it, so I'm a believer.
Yeah. Oh, listen, I love the app. I wish they wouldn't complain so much. But my point is, when they get bored and have nothing to do, they are going to be extra sensitive about what you're doing out there in the marketplace. So I think it's critical that you understand, the zeitgeist, the feeling, the local feeling going on in your marketplace. Let's say if it's great, you need to know how people are feeling about this. Now, there's one argument that says green light clients, and that's a trademark term that I've created. Green light clients that love what you that believe what you believe and want what you sell, right? They believe what you believe and they want what you sell. Those green light clients probably don't care. But if you're concerned about how the community feels about you, then you're going to have to be sensitive to that and sensitive to how you go about. For example, masks are voluntary. I'd have all my guys wearing masks. If you have two guys in a truck or two trucks showing up, making sure that they're not just working together, even if they are living together as family, which some of you have that, where families of 2 or 3 driving in a car together to come to work at your place. The perception is going to be much more important. Well, the perception from a marketing perspective will be more important than reality. Reality is important to actually deal with the disease. So you've got to be sensitive to all that and in constant touch and be really clear who your green light clients are. But if you're going for a little bit more of mass selling, then you're going to have to be you're going to have to pay attention more to what the masses in your local market are thinking and saying, and then set your guidelines more to the masses. So I think it depends a bit on your niche and on your local environment, Beth. So again, I don't tell any of my clients what to do. This is I don't want to say a moral decision, but let's call it a moral decision. And those you have to make yourself. But I'm giving them the different boundaries to think about in order to make the best decisions.
That makes sense. Tell me more about your thoughts on marketing right now.
So I do have to run on the hour. I have an appointment with somebody in Canada, Beth. So you can have me back in 2 weeks and we can finish.
Okay, I will.
So you want to be targeted in your marketing now more than ever, right? I think that goes without saying. Lots going on. So who's buying now and who's not buying in your company? You should know who's buying and who's not buying. You should, is the phone ringing or not ringing? First off, I hope it's ringing. I hope you have a marketing engine already working. And who is buying and who's not. And then you can take your marketing and focus it on who's buying. A study was done by Kellogg that showed in the Great Depression, the companies that kept marketing during that came out ahead. And we saw that again during the Great Recession. So you should keep marketing. It's literally cheaper and there's less competition. So your marketing impressions will seem more prevalent. And so you want to keep marketing, but I would say now you can really dial it in. So what's working for some of my clients, they're getting more leads from people that are retired. Go figure. If that happens to be what you're getting more leads from, you can literally target that on Facebook and increase that type of marketing. So this is a time to be more savvy or not less, and to stay present and don't hide your head in the shell like a tortoise would.
Makes sense. Jeffrey, I really appreciate your thoughts today. I know our audience is going to be very appreciative, and we will take you up on that offer a couple weeks out to see what's going on. Any last thoughts on the SBA or PPP if folks haven't already, if they're not already underway in that process?
My favorite three initials, SBA, PPP. Those are my favorite 6 initials. So I put up a crisis link on my website, jeffreyscott.biz/crisis. And there are some common links that you'll find in other places, but there's also other links, other kinds of grants out there besides SBA. I put those up, videos that are giving you leadership ideas on how to work your way through this. Some good articles, for example, from the Harvard Business Review. So that link will give you some unique resources that you're not seeing out there that you might see in your association websites. I think the SBA and the PPP, I think it's going to run out. I think they'll refund it. Just my personal guess. If you don't want to plan on them refunding it, act now. Generally by now, or at least by Sunday, most banks have gotten their online portal set up. If not by Sunday, it'll be by Monday. I would get it done this week, if not today. But personally, I think they'll refund it or further fund it because they've just opened it up, by the way. Now large restaurant chains can take advantage of it. So they're opening up who can take advantage of it. And for all those reasons, I think they'll extend the funding, but just in case, I would act now.
Excellent. And then we will post your contact information, but tell us how we can reach you.
You can reach me at jeff@jeffreyscott.biz. If you go to my website, there's ways to contact me there, JEFFREYSCOTT.biz. If you want to learn about my peer groups, they're hyper active right now. The chatter and the help and the support is just like, it's huge. So if you've ever thought about that, now's a great time to be in a support system like that.
It's a good time to be part of a community and rely on the resources of other peers around the country. So we'll talk more about that next time as well. I really appreciate you joining us today, and keep us posted on what's new.
I will, Beth. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.